Most crimes are committed out of passion and jealousy. Now early in the morning, Christian was sitting in his car, waiting for his wife Leonora, who was jogging in the pouring rain at that time. Seizing the moment, Christian hit his wife on the empty road. There were no witnesses. The police commissioner still blames himself for not being able to prove Christian's involvement, even though he had solved many complex cases in the past. The commissioner's daughter, Josephine, thought it might have been an accident. But the commissioner is sure that Christian acted deliberately. It is known that 3 days before the incident, Christian received a message in the middle of the night. The phone signal woke Leonora, and she demanded her husband explain who was texting him at such a late hour. Christian lied, saying it was Peter about work, but of course she didn't believe him, suspecting him of infidelity. When Leonora uncompromisingly demanded to see the message, Christian tried to wriggle out, saying that Peter was having an affair with their mutual acquaintance and constantly writing to him about it. Christian didn't want his wife to see the message because she supposedly knew the woman. But Leonora didn't care about Peter and his women. She tried to snatch the phone from her husband, but he resisted so strongly that the phone flew to the wall and broke. Long ago, Christian received an engineering education and then opened a construction company with his friend Peter. Leonora in her youth was a talented violinist and entered the Royal Academy of Music, but she had to abandon her career when their son Johann became seriously ill. He fought for his life for many years, and finally he got better. After the morning jog, Leonora apologized to her husband for yesterday, suggesting they take his phone for repair. But Christian said he would buy a new phone. Leonora took their son to school. He asked to pick up Martha, his girlfriend. Leonora is very happy for Johann, who after many years of struggle, can now live the life of an ordinary teenager. Meanwhile, Christian arrived at his company's construction site, and Peter informed him about a tax audit. Most likely nothing serious, just a random check. When Peter left on business, Christian smiled at the young beautiful employee of the company, Xenia, unable to take his eyes off her. Later, they secretly met in a building under construction. Their affair has been going on for 6 months. Christian said that because of her nightly messages, he had a terrible scandal at night. Christian never got to read Xenia's messages, in which she said he had to decide, her or his wife. It was an ultimatum. The police commissioner is aware of these messages and can only guess in whose favor Christian made his choice. Xenia is tired of Christian feeding her promises for 6 months. He asked her to wait a little longer until Johann fully recovers. Until then, Christian cannot leave his family. But Xenia is no longer willing to wait. She really wants her own children, her own family. After Leonora visited the car wash, she began recovering messages on her husband's broken phone. At the same time, she found a photo on his company's website, where he is pictured with Xenia. Leonora found the girl on social networks, where many of her photos with Christian were posted. Judging by how tenderly they look at each other, there is no doubt that there is something between them. When her husband returned, Leonora didn't show that she knew anything. Today they are going to attend a corporate event at Christian and Peter's company. Leonora tried to ignite passion in him, but he said he had promised Peter to be there early. During the celebration, Peter made a toast in honor of their company's prosperity and in honor of Xenia Mikkelsen, their star architect, who contributed many innovative ideas to improve building materials, making them more environmentally friendly. It was unbearable for Leonora to listen to this, and even more so to look at her husband's young and successful mistress. Xenia joined the toast, accepting the ovations. Later, when the official part was over and the banquet began, Leonora lost sight of Christian and Xenia. She searched for them everywhere and caught them right in Peter's office in an act of passion. Leonora took off her shoes to avoid being noticed and watched in shock. On the way back, she could no longer hide her emotions. Christian asked what was wrong. Leonora replied that she was just tired. The next morning, Christian went to build a fire on a raft with his friend Kim and asked how he had told his ex-wife Annette about his intention to divorce. Kim replied that it had been a difficult conversation, even though he wasn't divorcing her because of another woman. Kim was convinced that such matters are best discussed honestly, as relationships that have run their course can be detrimental to people. Christian thought that Kim was right. Upon returning home, he decided to talk openly with his wife. It was evident that their marriage had long ceased to satisfy both of them. The struggle with Johann's illness had consumed so much attention that they often forgot about each other. When asked if he had another woman, Christian replied that he did not. Then Leonora stated that she had seen them yesterday in Peter's office and that Xenia had looked her straight in the eye. Christian expressed his regret. Leonora reminded him that she could go to prison for his financial fraud, even if he ran away with Xenia. Leonora had already spoken with a lawyer and knew that she would be arrested as an accomplice unless she went to the police and reported his fraud. Christian couldn't believe that his wife was threatening him, considering he had done it for their son, who wouldn't have survived without surgery in the USA. In response, Leonora furiously declared that everything had been sacrificed for the family. Now she couldn't even get a decent job because she hadn't played the violin for 20 years. And Leonora had no desire to repeat the fate of Kim's ex-wife, who now worked in a supermarket. Christian had two options: either stay with the family or face 5 years in prison. Both Christian and Leonora had sacrificed much for the family, including the opportunity to leave. Later, Christian suggested to Peter that they confess their tax fraud, without mentioning Leonora's blackmail. They had gotten rich by manipulating exchange rates, which was considered large-scale fraud. Peter didn't understand why they should confess if it could continue to be concealed. It seemed his business partner was hiding something from him, though he stubbornly denied it. Xenia could no longer remain in limbo. Christian said he had confessed everything to his wife. Xenia was happy to hear this and asked Christian to meet her mother today. He agreed. During the meeting with Kim, Christian was very gloomy, making it easy to guess his problems on the home front. Kim suggested that Leonora just needed time. When she realized her life without Christian would be better, she would handle the divorce more easily. Leonora constantly cried, unable to get out of her head what she had seen during the corporate party. But at some point her sadness turned into pure rage. When Christian went to the city to find Leonora's old friend, hoping that Cassandra would support her during such a difficult period, Leonora followed him. Cassandra barely recognized Christian because she hadn't seen Leonora for a long time, as she had stopped communicating with all her friends, fully focusing on caring for her son. Cassandra believed that Leonora wasn't the type to be abandoned. Long ago in her youth, Leonora had a boyfriend named Mike, who tragically died after falling off a cliff. There were rumors that Leonora had pushed Mike off the cliff after learning of his infidelity. Cassandra advised Christian to find leverage if he truly wanted a divorce. Christian asked what the name of the girl Mike had been seeing was. First, Christian found the cliff where it had all happened. Then he received a call from Sonia, the girl Cassandra had mentioned. Sonia remembered that on the day of the tragedy, she and Mike were at a bonfire party. They were very much in love. At some point when they were alone, Sonia had a feeling that someone was watching them. As soon as Sonia was briefly distracted, she heard Mike's heart-wrenching scream. Sonia was sure she had seen Leonora there. Christian didn't know that Leonora was also following him. He learned that Sonia had informed the police that Leonora might have been involved in Mike's death. In the present, the police commissioner tells his daughter that Leonora had an alibi. That day she was at the music academy, as confirmed by a teacher. So Sonia must have been mistaken in her testimony. Removing his wedding ring, Christian was about to meet Xenia's mother, unaware that Leonora was still following him. When Christian returned home, Leonora told him to pack his things and get out. Christian in turn said he had met with Cassandra and learned about Mike and Sonia, as well as the rumors that Leonora had pushed her ex-boyfriend off a cliff. Leonora declared that this was complete absurdity. She hadn't changed her decision. Either Christian breaks up with Xenia right now, or she will wait for him from prison. Christian had no choice but to call Xenia, but he couldn't find the strength to break up with her and ended the call. He told his wife directly that he loved Xenia. In a rage she threw him out of the house, stating that they were switching cars. Now it was her Mercedes, her house and her son. In the present, the commissioner suggested that Christian first went to the office, was seen by the cleaners and left his phone there. Quite ingenious. Even in despair, having lost everything, Christian kept a cool head, driven by hatred. Under the cover of night, he tracked his wife and without hesitation got rid of her, then fled the scene. Then Christian went to the office to provide himself with an alibi. At home, his son, who had a final exam tomorrow, was waiting for him. Christian tried to act as if nothing had happened. When Johan asked if he had seen Mom, Christian didn't answer. The realization of what had happened overwhelmed him. Later, seeing Leonora, safe and sound, he dropped his glass in shock, as if he had seen a ghost. Leonora thought her husband had changed his mind and broken up with Xenia. Leonora mentioned that she had changed her jogging route, now she runs in the forest. Christian realized with horror that he had mistakenly run over the wrong woman. Nearby, he noticed police car sirens. Replaying recent events in his mind, Christian refused to believe it. For Leonora, the most important thing is to keep the family together. And she wants to feel that Christian has forgotten Xenia. From now on, all his thoughts are occupied with what he has done. And he makes every effort not to give himself away. Leonora, on the other hand, has softened and even returned the keys to his car. Kim, walking his dog, told them that a woman was hit here at night. All those who live in this area were shocked, especially by the fact that the driver fled the scene. It turned out that the victim was a mother of 3. During a conversation with neighbors, Leonora mentioned that she usually jogs here. The commissioner took on the investigation of this case, but it didn't immediately occur to him to question Leonora. This happened at their son's graduation party, Police officers showed up and asked Christian where he was on the night of the accident. Christian replied that he worked late at the office and didn't see or hear anything suspicious. Leaving their business card, the police left. Xenia constantly writes messages to Christian, but he ignores her. Leonora couldn't help but notice her husband's nervous behavior, despite all his efforts to hide his true emotions. Now he diligently plays the role of a good father and husband. At the scene of the accident, all those who mourn the woman have set up a memorial. Christian went there, tormented by guilt. He went to the police station to confess, but the officer was busy and asked him to wait. At that moment Christian changed his mind, realizing that he must think of his son first. Leonora became suspicious when she realized that her husband had visited the car wash that morning, even though he wasn't supposed to. Moreover, the car wash employee told her the exact time. She decided to ask her husband directly why he urgently needed to wash the car. Leonora was so persistent that the cashier sent her the surveillance footage showing Christian arriving at the car wash in a minibus with Romanian plates. Leonora guessed that her husband had wanted to get rid of her. Their conversation was interrupted by Johann, who, judging by his parents' expressions, guessed that something was happening. Christian asked his son to leave because he and his mother needed to talk. Leonora couldn't believe that her husband was capable of this. He tried to persuade Leonora to listen to him, but she called the police. Christian snatched her phone, telling the duty officer that he had seen a minibus with Romanian plates on the night of the accident. Leonora ran out of the house and got into her car, afraid to be near a man who was ready to leave their son without a mother for the sake of another woman. Ignoring her husband's attempts to explain, she drove away. Soon the police arrived at their house. Johann doesn't understand what's going on. His father hugged him, asking him to go to his room and wait. The police knocked on the door. Christian told them about the minibus. The sheriff understood that Christian was guilty, but they needed solid evidence. Leonora asked her husband to meet. They met at a restaurant where she could feel safe among people. Leonora had thought long and hard about what to do and concluded that she was not ready to deprive Johann of his father in future. Johann was all she had since she had sacrificed everything for him. Christian was willing to atone for his guilt in any way possible. Leonora could forgive him if he did to Xenia what he had tried to do to her. As long as Xenia was alive, Leonora's life was in danger. Leonora was well aware that this made her an accomplice to the crime, and she was prepared to provide her husband with an alibi. She also revealed that she had been the one to push Mike off the cliff. She had immediately sensed that he had another woman. After committing the crime, Leonora fled the scene and went to the music academy, thus securing herself a foolproof alibi. And she had succeeded. The sheriff suspected this but had no proof. Christian and Leonora were certainly well matched. They began executing their plan by booking a suite in a luxury hotel. Leonora reminded Christian that no one should see him leaving the hotel. Everything had to look like a break-in. Christian had no choice but to go through with it, and he quietly left the hotel. That night, Xenia did not expect to see Christian, who had been ignoring her for a long time. She no longer wanted to be Johann's toy. When Xenia shut the door in his face, Johann smashed the glass, saying he had never loved anyone the way he loved her. At that moment a neighbor appeared, having heard the sound of breaking glass. Flustered, Xenia assured him that everything was fine. Meanwhile Leonora ordered food, pretending that her husband was still in the hotel room. Once the neighbor left, Christian asked Xenia to pour him a drink and drew the curtains. He was about to carry out his plan when Leonora, using his phone, sent a message to Xenia, stating that family meant everything to him. Food was delivered to the room. Leonora played a pre-recorded audio message from Christian's phone to make it seem like he was speaking from the bathroom. Meanwhile, Christian gave in to passion with Xenia. When she went to take a shower, Leonora crept up behind her and ended her life. Christian had no idea about this part of the plan. When Christian entered the bathroom, he saw his wife, who told him that she had known he wouldn't be able to do it. One way or another, that dreadful night ended, and a new day began. Unlike Leonora, Christian was suffering. There were almost no fingerprints or other traces left in Xenia's house. Leonora knew that the police would want to talk to them regardless and asked Christian to leave it to her. During the conversation with the police, Christian stated that he had no objection to his wife's presence since she was aware of his affair with Xenia. Leonora said that she and Christian had been together for 20 years and that every marriage had its ups and downs. She also mentioned that on the night of Xenia's disappearance, they had been at a spa hotel. Yes, Xenia's body was missing, but it was obvious that she was no longer alive. And the sheriff had his suspicions as to why. Police officers and dozens of volunteers began searching for Xenia in the forest. Leonora kept reminding her husband that they were doing all this for Johann. During an outdoor party, Leonora was nervous, fearing that the police would find Xenia's body. The officers watched as Christian anxiously tried to light a large bonfire on a raft in the middle of the lake, risking exposing himself and Leonora. But he managed to do it before the police found anything. All the guests applauded. Leonora and Christian put in every effort not to give themselves away. The fire blazed, but aside from Leonora and Christian, no one knew it was a funeral pyre for Xenia. The sheriff never found anything. Perhaps the couple had hidden the charred bones. Soon after, they sold their house, preparing to move. But Christian still couldn't fully let go of the past. In the present, the sheriff's daughter, Josephine, was getting married. Her mother had passed away, leaving only her father, who gave his daughter advice. Marriage was not only about love but also about danger. One had to be prepared for anything. Xenia's remains remained at the bottom of the lake, never to be found. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel not to miss more exciting new products. Also, the authors will be pleased if you leave your opinion in the comments.